Welcome, everybody, back to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. I have an absolutely awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Asia Evans. I'm a financial therapist and the author of Feel Good Finance. So my work is really centered in money and emotions, our relationship with money, unpacking that, understanding where it comes from, how it's impacting your life now, and then deciding what you want to do about it in the future and how you want to live your best life.
I love that. There was a lot in that one little introduction there. There's just so many things to unpack because it's like feel good financial therapist, but also talking about people's relationship with money. And, it's one of those things that I think that one of the things that for myself, as I've started doing this podcast, I am the financial idiot. Like that was where I came from when I started this podcast. Cause like my daughter would be like, Daddy, what's this thing? And I'm like, I have no idea.
You're like,
And
let's find out.
Whoa, there we go. For those of you listening on the podcast, you just missed a golden moment. That's awesome.
This is like the beauty of like too many wires and too small of a plate.
100%. My
Holy
favorite
cannoli.
are people who have cats. Like on
it's
podcasts,
the dog.
cats and dogs are the best. And like for me, we have my dog's name is Elvis, and I've got hardwood floors, and Elvis has his claws, and he walks around. It's like, and like I'm like, everyone's like, oh, don't worry, it's not that loud. I'm like, no, I do the post production. I know how loud it is, and like sure enough, it's like. It sounds like Godzilla's walking across my room. But getting back to our fun moment there, talking about the feel good, but that's awesome. Like we started off this podcast with laughter, and one of the things too is like I feel like so many people either have two types of relationship with money. One that's completely unconscious; they aren't even aware of the relationship they have, or two, they're terrified. There's just this negative overtones. And, I've been building out my team. I have a business with doing media for people. And one of the things that I've been really working at is to make sure that our workplace is fun, like ridiculously fun. Yep. We're having fun contests. We're doing giveaways. We're having like KPI goals and giving away silly gifts. I had a massage therapist show up and just give everyone 30 minutes and people are like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever had, Because at the end of the day, people want to feel good at work. They want to feel good around money. They want to feel good. They want to feel happy. And we don't always feel that. I have had jobs that I just didn't feel good. I've had times that money wasn't this feel good thing. So talk to me. You've been called the feel good financial therapist. What does that even mean to you? And how did your journey lead to that work or to this work?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with journey first, and because I think that will help kind of lay the foundation for how I got to this place to be the feel good financial therapist. So when I was in my mid to late 20s, that's when I had my own financial awakening. And for me, that was really like, what the hell is going on with my money? I thought I knew, but I had no idea type of thing. I was living in New York City. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids, but I did have a lot of bills. I had student loans. I was still paying for my car because I was in a long distance relationship with my now husband and felt like I needed quote unquote all of these things. And I did, but some of them I really didn't. So I was making about $60,000 at that time. And to me, that was so much money. And that is a lot of money by national standards for a lot of people. However, I lived in New York City, and that is not a lot of money when you're living in New York City and trying to pay off tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt and a car and survive and rent and all of the things. And I just inflated my life too much. I was thinking that because I was making this salary, I was rich. I could send out my laundry. I could go out to dinners with my friends whenever I wanted to. We could go to happy hours. I could go shopping. I could have a fancy gym membership. I could just live this, what felt like a quintessential New York City life at the time. And that life is very, very expensive. And I found myself feeling really bad when I had to say no. And I did have a little bit of financial education to know that I needed to say no, but sometimes I said yes when I shouldn't have been. So I was finding my credit card debt going up. And I was like, why? I'm making all this money. What's going on? Where is it going? Why do I feel like this? And what I was feeling was bad. I was feeling bad about myself. I was feeling jealous that I couldn't keep up with my friends who were making more money than me. And I did not feel good. I didn't feel good about myself and I didn't feel good about my money. And that really set me on this journey to start having conversations about money and start learning about money. My
Yeah.
cousin, Tim Smith, who I'll shout out, we went to Easter dinner and he had mentioned to me, he's like, Asia, you should really just start learning about money and just really understanding about money management in general. And I really just took that advice and ran with it. And at the time, personal financial education advice, money stuff was not nearly as ubiquitous as it is now. It was kind of hard to find
Yeah.
in little corners and books and, the gurus, all the people. So I did all of the things, but really fell in love with the topic. And as I learned more, I felt more comfortable when my clients would come to my sessions and be like, yeah, I'm stressed about money. I'm stressed about my boyfriend. I'm stressed about my family. And I'd be like, wait. Let's go back to the money piece. What's going on there? And as I was kind of developing as a baby financial therapist, if you will, I really could not ignore the connection between mental health and money and how people
Yes.
felt when their money didn't feel good, how people,
Yeah.
what they would say to themselves, what they would assume about other people who they deemed more financially well off than them. I just couldn't get enough of that kind of more psychological nuance around our relationships with money. And then I found the Financial Therapy Association. I found Trauma of Money. I did all of their coursework. I got involved with the FTA. I'm now president of the board now. I wrote Feel Good Finance. And what really got me here was my love of people. I've always been such a cheerleader for people. I never want people to feel bad about themselves, honestly,
Yeah.
which drives a lot of my work in the mental health space. But then when I realized money was such a driver for people feeling bad, I was like, oh, no, 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 no. We just need to teach you a few things and you can feel better about this. You can feel good. You can get
Yes.
excited about checking your finances that once felt like something you needed to avoid.
I love that. And it is because it comes down to like the relationship people have with money and how they grew up with it and what was modeled for them, for myself, there was that in the cartoons is the ostrich that's got its head in the ground. I think that was a general type of role that money played in my family. And not because, and I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but I just think that was what was modeled for my parents, and then what was modeled for them. And when you get these people that are like one person who's got all this trauma and then they're trying to raise someone and that trauma gets passed on,
Yep.
and you come and you sit there. And I love that you said that there was this moment where you start sitting there going, wow, hang on. It was almost this epiphany moment for myself
Yes.
where I was sitting there looking at, and my daughter started asking me these questions about money. And I was trying to figure out, what is that? Like, well, what is a savings account? Why do we have it? And then I was like, okay, that's a good question. Like, and then we started talking about other concepts. And I was trying to think, well, how do I talk to my daughter about inflation? How do I talk to her about, anything else like compounding interest? Like these things that were like these concepts that, and this is one of the things that was challenging for me because the personal finance books that I saw were very much had this idea that you had it all together.
Yeah.
That there was this like, oh, welcome to the world of personal finance. We're going to talk to you about how to, move this million into that place and that's this million into that place. And I'm just like, how do I pay my monthly bills
Hello.
and not run out at the end of the month? How do I make sure that I don't go buy the new neon jumper just because it's awesome and probably don't need it? But, how do I stop myself from doing that? Because, you turn around and look at it and go, wow. You see it. Like I was reading about this one celebrity that got super rich and he went and bought a $2 million like trading card. And certainly I'm not going to hate on that entirely because that thing does have value. It is a type of an asset. However, should you go and buy that $2 million trading card? Is it a great idea? Maybe a financial advisor would say, like, let's think about this. Let's talk about this. And so one of the things that I'm getting at was all these moments that we have growing up kind of define how what our relationship is like with money. What were some of the defining moments that shaped your financial mindset? Was there
Yeah.
anything that you said like, this is it?
Yes. So, so much of this, and I'm so glad we're talking about it because I really could talk about it forever, honestly. And a
Right.
lot of this, I do talk about myself in the book too. So I really dive deep into my own history and my story. But for me, some of the things that come up when I'm thinking about it is one. So I remember, I think I was in like elementary school, maybe middle school. Middle school's a hard time for people. It's a hard time for
Middle
kids.
school is rough for me
It's
as well.
so
So
rough. It's so rough. But that was for me a time when money started kind of like showing itself a little bit more and the confusion around what that looked like. So I didn't realize at the time that I was pretty comfortably upper middle class for my area where I lived in. We also lived in the city of where I grew up versus kids who lived in the suburbs, which is where I went to school. So I'm seeing the difference of, hey, I live in a brownstone. I don't really have a big backyard. But I go to their house, whoever my friends, my classmates in the suburbs, and they've got 2-car garages, they have pools, they have these huge backyards. And I'm like, wow, they must have it all kind of thing. I
mm-hmm.
didn't realize it was just like kind of like a choice around
Yeah.
like where my family decided to live because both of my parents are from New York City. So it made total sense that they're like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get this brownstone in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was thinking about like, wow, other people are dressing in, they have like great Adidas sneakers. Like, listen, I'm an elder millennial. I'm just going to call it out. It is what it is. This is what was hot at the time, right? Adidas
Right.
sneakers were a must. Being able to
Yeah.
wear Abercrombie and Fitch, must. Limited to,
Yeah.
must. Like those type of kind of signifiers, materialistic things. Again, remember I was in middle school, felt so important to me, but they were not a priority to my parents. Like it was not a
Yeah.
priority for my mom to keep me decked out in Abercrombie or Hollister jeans. She just like was like, Asia, what? I'm not spending $60
Yeah.
on these jeans. Like you are going to outgrow them in 2 hot seconds. Like it's just not something that was a priority to her. But that for me felt so wounding. I'm like, I'm not cool. I don't have the cool clothes. This feels awful. So now I have to be really mindful of that kind of money status script, if you will, that can come up for me to make
Yeah.
sure that I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses because this was part of like my journey and my money story. And, there's a ton of other stories and anecdotes, but that's one that really sticks out for me. And now that I'm a parent, I have to be really mindful of.
It's interesting. I actually, in middle school was a time as well for me where I started to see things, and it was the ability to not keep up with the Joneses in ways. You get to see, like in my class, there were kids that would show up. Remember, one of my friends always had the Levi's silver tabs. And I was getting the Ross specials, and hey, I love Ross now. No hate against budget buying, but like I go to town on Ross. I was just like, ooh, look at this. It's $2. I love it. But like at that time, I was like, well, I get the Levi's silver tabs. And then like I look, my mom's like, those are $150 jeans. You're gonna outgrow them in 2 weeks. And I see it with my daughter. Like she was like wanting some nice tennis shoes, and I was just looking at it, I was like, these are $150. And the last pair of tennis shoes that we bought you outgrew in a month. You are a growing kid. But one of the things that was I noticed was that there was kind of this, it started to be this demarcation. Like I grew up, you see the lines when you're growing up, early on, you see the lines that represent the different boxes people get put into. You're this, you're that, you're tall, you're short, and then all of a sudden, like middle school time, you start seeing this one other really big, like thing that sorts people: wealth, money.
Yeah.
And it affects our whole lives, but yet we're not always aware of it, and so I think starting to talk about these things and like, think about that, like couples therapy, easy to do, intimacy coaching sessions. People are like, yeah, I'll go to see a coach and let them talk to us about whatever. And people will talk about that. Yeah. Oh, we went to see an intimacy coach. We went to see a couples therapist. But if you talk about money, like, oh, we went to see a financial therapist, and people are like, ooh, you
You're
guys having
having
money
money
problems?
trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. You're having money problems. It's where they go, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you guys have problems right now, and that's not just like, tell me about it. Normally that you're having money problems, it's like, let's shut this conversation down because I don't want to touch on my own insecurities.
Yeah. Or be too aggressive or pry or ask too much. And
Yep.
money is so taboo, to your point that it sounds like you're bringing up. It's just, it has to be so secretive, as if we all don't have to navigate it in some way, shape, or form. We have to kind of, oh, money troubles. You're seeing a financial therapist. I'm like, a lot of the people I see, and this is such a misconception that I want to break down for people. A lot of people I see have a lot of money.
Yeah,
They're
right?
not struggling financially, but they are struggling with their relationship to money. They are struggling
Exactly.
to allow money to be a tool in some way. So that could be, hey, I am not worthy unless I get this promotion. I'm not as good as my friend or whoever I'm comparing myself to until I'm making this much money, until I have this much money. Or it's, I have all this money, but it's so different than how I grew up, and it's so different. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want to spend it. I don't want to be flashy. I don't want to draw attention to myself. And
Yeah.
those things are important, but definitely in America, we have this real obsession with money that it's like, oh my goodness, I want it, I want it, I want it. Let's get whatever, let's have more money. Then you get it. But then you're like, well, I'm so different now. I'm not relatable. And people are now hating on me for it. So it's this very big push and
It's
pull
weird.
that just doesn't allow anybody to be content or happy with where
Yeah.
they're at. It just feels like it's never enough.
Right? That's so true. Now, it's interesting because there are so many different types of like emotional blocks people face around money. Um, you know, whether it might be something that happened at a certain point in time or whatever, but how can people start to overcome them? And what are some of those blocks that people
Yeah.
face?
Yeah. So I would say first you need to be aware of what they are
Right.
before we're even thinking about overcoming them. And a lot of times that means we need to go take a walk down memory lane and start talking about your family. And to your point, what we started talking about at the beginning of the show is just like, what are the generational norms around money that I did not
Yeah.
realize could have been passed down to me? Whose money beliefs are they? Are they mine? Are they grandma's? Because this was really important during the time that she was living. Did this come from an uncle who, served? Is this from somebody else who lived through the Great Depression? And there are tons of examples, right? This is very individual for each person in the family they grew up in. But taking the time to, I always ask my clients, check your family respectability at the door. And
Yeah.
that is not to say that I want anybody to be disrespectful to their family, but people really have a hard time talking about their experience with money without feeling like they're speaking ill of their family.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're not doing anything wrong. I just need you to name where it was hard for you, where it was uncomfortable for you. But that's really difficult for people because they feel like they're being rude or mean or disrespectful to their family. I'm like, no, I just want to know about your experience. You don't even have to say their names. You can just be like, hey, this aspect of my childhood was hard. This is where this money belief came from. This is what I saw. And not to say it was wrong or right. It's just to say that this is what kind of impacted how I think about money. And then we can start having the conversation of, are these your beliefs? Are they somebody else's? How do we unravel them and then replace them with new financial behaviors that you feel good about?
I love that. There was just a little bit of a personal family story on my side. I was trying to unravel things at a certain point in time and realize, why was money avoidance such a big thing in my family? And I was trying to think about it. My family actually comes from one religious group that was in 1844. All these people did some math and they thought that was the year that was going to be the end of time. So they all walked out into a field. They sold everything. They sold everyone in that field, sold everything. And they just were standing there waiting for the end of the world. And that night, they all sat there and said, hang on, nothing happened today. And then like the leaders of the group were like, well, we got to recalculate. The date was wrong. We're going to recalculate. But, still the end of the world's coming. And, And that got passed down. And I look at some family members who have zero set aside for anything in retirement. And now they are in retirement struggling.
Yeah.
And I sit there and look at it, and I have to look at it without judgment and just go, this is what these people believed. Yeah. But then I don't want to make those same mistakes. I don't want to be the guy in retirement who's sitting there going, wow, how am I going to pay for this medical thing? Where am I going to live? It's challenging. And I think that one of the things I had to do is to have the vulnerability to look at that and go, you know what? I'm not judging them, but I'm getting clarity on this. And I'm also not hating on them, but I'm also going to look at this as clearly as I can, because this did come from somewhere. And then once you figure out where it comes from, you sit there and I try to bring a little bit of amusement and go, wow, that's fun. And then what can we do to kind of find a new path? What is it that you're doing to re-own your new beliefs,
Yeah. And I think that's what's hard, right? That's the part that it's like, oh God, I'm talking ill of my family. This feels uncomfortable for me. This happened so long ago, to your point of like, let's not add judgment to it, but it is something that people are carrying. And the way I like to try to explain it for people is like the idea of Inception. So remember, if you watch the movie, I'm not ruining it for anybody. It's a great movie. It's like 20 years old at this point, which is so insane to me. But
right?
Like, I'm like, I realized I was like, oh, I don't want to ruin the movie. I was like, Asia, it's 20 years old. Like it's happened already. Anyway, long story short, the idea is that Leo put this idea in his wife's head that her reality wasn't real. And that no matter what reality she was living in, it did not feel real because the idea was there and it permeated everything. And that's how we have to think about money beliefs. Now, your family generations ago, right? Many, many, many generations ago in 1844, realized that the world wasn't ending, but it doesn't mean that belief and that money belief went away. So today it could be, well, the world could end any other day. We only have so much time, so I don't need to worry about it. I cannot see my future that far in advance because I have been passed down this belief that the world is going to end on this certain day. So it may not be as extreme as that exact example, but it turns into this very, like not convoluted, but this lofty kind of ambiguous idea of like, oh, everything could be gone tomorrow, so I don't need to save. Everything could be gone tomorrow, so I don't need to worry about retirement. And that's how it shifts over generations, and realizing it and the work that you've done to realize it and then be like, okay, now I have to be really intentional about shifting my own financial habits so that this isn't coming up for me. That is the tough part.
100%. Now, one of the things that I notice, and this is something that living overseas, there's major differences in cultural background and family systems around money beliefs. It's like in Vietnam, retirement, you mean investing in your kid, making sure they have a good job. It's like, that's what retirement is in Vietnam. It's not, there's no money saved. It's that make sure your kid. That's why everyone's like, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor, kid. That's it. And this is the thing. And this is what the parents push. And, you see it. And when my wife and I talk about money values, and things that are interesting to us, or there's always these differences that we see popping up. Mm-hmm. And it could be, it doesn't have to be just between different people. It can be in someone's own, in themselves. They can have different, cultural background and feeling conflicted internally.
Yeah. Oh,
what do you recommend for people, your clients, that are trying to navigate these conflicting values?
Yeah. Two things can be true at once. I think we really have a hard time believing two things can be true at once. And that is when we start to be able to hold the nuances of beliefs. And when I say beliefs, it could be anything, right? It could be your money beliefs, your cultural beliefs, your beliefs of like your role in the family, how it should look, how it could look. And And then you enter into a relationship or a marriage or a family with somebody else. And now you also need to hold their beliefs too, because you guys are deciding to merge and move forward. And how do you start making room for yours and theirs at the same time and feeling like, hey, we may not always see exactly eye to eye, but how do we compromise in a way that I feel heard and my beliefs are represented as well as you feel heard and your beliefs are represented? So tons of communication. I cannot hammer this home enough. Communicate, 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 please. And
Yes.
then align on your goals, right? Like, what do we want this to look like? And how much of an impact is the outside society having on how we think about our lives? And that goes back to what we were just talking about when it's like examining, okay, I have these cultural beliefs. Do I still want them? Do I like
Right.
these? Do they still work for me in my current life? And how do you mix and mold them together so that it formulates what you want your best life to be? And I think that's really hard for
100%.
people to dive into because we're now pushing up against family, we're pushing up about against our beliefs. Like this is deep identity work. Like it's very
Yeah.
difficult to decide I'm going to be vulnerable enough with myself to be honest, but I'm also going to open up potentially to my partner or my kids or my family about what makes sense for us or what doesn't.
Well, I love that. And it is something because my wife and I had a little bit of a communication thing tonight where, we were chatting about something and I was talking to her about some financial goals. And one of the things I wanted to do was I'm really working hard to pay down my credit card bills,
Mhm.
their credit cards, just pay them off. So, and
Yeah.
then carry zero debt. And then she's like, so hang on, what do you do when you finish? Do you cut the cards up or do and I said, or do you, use your cards or are you going to run it back up? And I was like, well, I've heard people talk about all of these different things, and
Mhm.
it's like so what I'm planning on doing. And I'm not saying this is the right thing, but one of the
Yep.
things that I plan to do is probably trying to use them and then pay it off full at the end of the month.
Yep.
Just so that was what someone had told me. And I don't know if it's the right thing, but like one of the things that we were talking about was like, well, let's have the conversation, because
Yeah.
there are people that are like, dude, you must cut them up. There's too much temptation. You
Yeah.
have to do, and so my point being, we were able to have this conversation, a conversation that both of us didn't really know the answers, but
Yeah.
yet we talked about it together and it made it a lot easier to sit there and think about it,
Right.
and what type of stuff do we need to buy,
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, say you win the lottery, and my wife and I had this conversation once, and this was a part of the conversation tonight. We said, she said, well, what would you do if you won the lottery? And I said, what would you do? And for a second, she's like, well, you know what? I I would, and it was just a random thing. And she wouldn't actually do this because I know her well enough. But she's like, I would buy what was the bag? Tiffany's, Birkin bag. And I was just like, why? Why? Like, if you're going to buy silly stuff, like, I'm like, no way I'm buying stuff. I'm going to be traveling, and it's like,
Mhm.
I want to do, but she's like, well, I want something this, and you see that. You see people that value things, people that's, but again, you can't get everyone on the same page. And actually, if we won the lottery, we probably hire a great financial advisor and make sure that we got set up and did
Yeah.
everything right. That's the truthful thing that we would do if we won the lottery. But like the
Great
conversation
move.
was still right. The conversation still needs to be had because some
Yeah.
people are not having those conversations. So let me
Right.
ask you this. What are some financial communication habits that you encourage for
Mhm.
healthier relationships?
Yeah. So I really like the concept of a money date. So
Ooh,
having a monthly time where you two, and I'm going to think about it as two people in a relationship, marriage doesn't matter, you live together, whatever it
yeah,
is. I don't mind whatever your situation is,
right.
but two people, whatever stage of life you're in, get together on a monthly basis to have a conversation about the money. So in the beginning, it might be, hey, let's set a budget. Let's set what
Yeah,
our financial goals are. What are we driving towards? Like, what do we want with our money? What do we want our futures to look
100%.
like? Let's dream big, whatever that looks like. And then the monthly check in is to just be like, okay, how was our spending? What's our income looking like? Especially if you have variable income, if you work for yourself or, it's not as steady, It might be like a lot at one time and then it goes down, like up and down. So definitely have these kinds of conversations if you have variable income.
Right.
And then just be like, okay, are we on budget? Are we saving the way we want to be saving? Do we have anything major coming up? What are our financial goals? What are they looking like? And what are we doing? And that creates a space where you know you're going to talk about money. You realize, hey, it's on the calendar. We know it's going to happen. Like, what do I need to do to go into this conversation with less jitters or anxiety and just know that, hey, this is about our future. And I can feel confident about what we're going to talk about, that I'm going to be met where I'm at and with grace and with
Yes.
love and with dignity and respect. So
I
money
love that.
dates to me is perfect for communication.
Well, it's something that, we plan other types of dates. We talk about all these things in life, but like to actually sit down and say, let's have a date and talk about money is not something that people like, ooh, what are you gonna say, But it's
Yep.
awesome and it's so needed.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm thinking about places to go on a money date that are affordable
Perfect.
and fun, Where can we go? Well, let me ask, sorry that cut out there. I got a little bit of lag. I was just like, oh, you went per, and then it stopped. So,
Are we
um,
back?
now I want to ask you a little bit because when I was reading up, it said that you were working a lot with some modern money tools and fintech type stuff. Can
Mm-hmm.
you tell me a little bit about that and what's missing, or what types of tools are we missing, or what do we need, in the
Yeah. So
money sphere?
some of the consulting work that I was doing, in the past was really around looking at how do we think about human behavior and how does it meet fintech. So when people are coming up with these amazing technological solutions, whether that's like, hey, do we need an alert? Do we need a reminder that tells us what we're doing with our money or when we're going over our budget or whatnot? How do we make sure we are doing it gingerly and with our mental health and psychology in mind? So I
I love it.
wanted to make sure, I think technology it's not going away. We're just going to rely on it more and more. And I'm always really concerned of how do we make sure that we keep the human aspect in some of this work. And I think money, because, traditionally it has been, oh, it's so concrete. Just look at the numbers. It's not emotional. I couldn't be farther from the truth. Money is extremely emotional. Humans are emotional.
Yes.
We cannot take that out of money. You cannot take the humans out of money. Money doesn't matter if it doesn't have any humans to use it or like do anything with it. It just doesn't matter. So I wanted to make sure that how do we make sure we're looking at the clinical aspect, the psychological aspect, and just the human aspect of money and injecting that into fintech tools with some of the people I was consulting with.
I wish that they made more of the money apps fun.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I played so many video games. I loved them, but there was one game that I loved. It was Diablo. And I loved it because you could collect all this stuff. You're a
Mm-hmm.
warrior, you are a mage, you're whatever. And, I would collect the armor, I'd collect the gold, and it would
Yep.
validate me. It would have these little alerts, ding, 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 you just level 57. Or like, I'm level 57. Wasn't anything real. It was
Yeah.
just a fake thing. But like, I wish more of the money apps would give me I also do this one yoga app and it gives me an alert. You have done yoga or Duolingo. Like,
Yep.
man,
You want to
Duolingo,
gamify it.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Duolingo for money would be absolutely awesome. You are on a saving streak. You've been under this budget 27 days this month. I'd be like, that app I would love. But every time I check out one of these budgeting apps, it is insanely difficult to navigate. The UI UX is always difficult for me, and I'm pretty tech savvy, and I'm just like, how do I integrate this into my life? And I'm just like, give me the Duolingo for money, man. That's what I
Listen,
want.
somebody go create it. We're here for
Some
the consulting. We're ready.
I'm so in. Gosh, like if you could give me you have just leveled up with your interest. Yay! I
I
just
mean,
made
I
money.
love that. And I do find like certain ones give you a little bit of it, but that would be really amazing. Like the same way, perfect example, like Peloton, when you're like working out on
Yeah,
Peloton, it gives you the streak.
right.
Like, oh, you've been working out this many weeks. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to break that streak. We got to get that done. I
Yes.
closed the app this morning and I was like, damn it, my workout didn't count because I closed it while I was using a different app because I like to also gamify my workouts. But you're right. Like if somebody was like, hey, Asia, you've been under your budget for 10 days straight. I'm like, you're right. I'm not spending this money. I'm sticking to this budget.
Right.
I love that. Who's going to create it? Let us know.
Right. I mean, I'm surprised no one's done it yet because it's such a great idea. And to give you a little avatar that you can level up in game when you're doing stuff, you have now leveled up to a 37 mage of money. I'm like, oh yeah, look, I got a new outfit on. I mean, that's awesome, and Duolingo and Peloton are such great examples. But like, I think that it's like, because at the end of the day, I had this one guest on to my other podcast that was talking about just self-help stuff. And he's like, I know that we have all of the people that are glorifying, today I woke up and it was hard and I knew that it was great, and it's like, but you know what? Sometimes you have to find joy in what you're doing. Otherwise it's really hard to keep it going, and it's like, if you're on a budget, there are days where it's like, oh man, I really like those new shoes. They're so fancy. Oh, they're flashy too. Oh, the automatic laces, and like, those days are tough, but if you can sit there and gamify what you're working on, it makes it doable, Yeah. So I don't know. I do hope as well someone comes up with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be me. Somebody take this beautiful IP that me and Sean created and go run with it.
I gotta go find some developers I know and tell them to get going. So
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this one. What's one mindset shift or daily ritual that's made the biggest difference in your financial peace of mind?
I think having an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Like having an emergency fund, no matter how big or small it gets. And what I will say is that when you have to use it, reminding yourself it is okay to use it. That is why it is here. Because I think sometimes it can get hard to use it. You work so hard to save the money so that you have the cushion. And then something happens where you have to use it. And you're like, damn it, I worked so hard. I didn't want to have to use this money. I don't want to see the account go down. But I'm like, this is literally what it's for. So for me, not so much a daily habit, but whenever I put it in an account that I don't normally check, it's not in my routine because I'm like, this is not our money. It's saved for a different thing. But knowing it's there does give me a lot of peace of mind.
I love that. You summarized it so well though, because it's like you get it there and it's such a lifesaver. But then you do sit there, and go, man, I just had to tap into that. But you know what? That's why it's there. It is
That's what
there.
You did it for.
Yeah, to protect you in those times where you don't want to have the negative thing happen. Well, you're on a mission to help people live their best lives through financial wellness. What's one message you'd want every listener to walk away with today?
Yeah, I can promise you are not the only one struggling. Whatever it is that your struggle looks like, I promise you are not the only one. And I think especially when it comes to money, because of everything that we talked about before, it's so secretive. It's so taboo. It feels like everybody else is out there living your best life and you are at home feeling bad about yourself and about your money. You are not the only one feeling bad about your money. I cannot say that more.
I love that. Well, one last question. If you could go back in time and give yourself some financial advice to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
I have so much to say. I've been thinking about this because I was like, I want to create a post about this. But what I would tell myself is, girlfriend, pay off your student loans right now. Pay off your student loans. Get a second job to pay off your student loans. You have so much time. Go make that money. And after your student loans are paid off, I would tell myself to throw a ton of money into retirement accounts and investing. Those two things I feel like are probably my biggest regrets from when I was younger. Knowing what I know now, I wish I got out of student loan debt earlier, quicker, and I wish my retirement account was a lot fatter than it is.
Right. You and me